What's up, guys? Coming back at you with another video. This time we're going to be doing a deck tech of Vial Smasher the Fierce and Kydele, Chosen of Kruphix. Now both of these are probably my favorite partner commanders to use. If you don't know what Vial Smasher does, the first spell you cast on each turn, you select at random an opponent, and it deals damage to that opponent equal to the CMC of the spell you cast. It encourages you to play more expensive spells first, so you get to deal more damage to someone, and it's just randomness, but it's very powerful. For obvious reasons, he had to be banned in 1v1. And Kydele, Chosen of Kruphix, she taps for colorless mana equal to the number of cards that you draw in a turn. The only downside is she does need a haste enabler, but she can potentially tap you for a ton of mana, and she is a big reason why this deck works really well. Using these two commanders, we can make some sort of wheel and deal type of strategy similar to that of Nekusar, and also some aspects of a Yidra Storm deck, both of which work pretty well. This isn't going to be a super expensive deck, guys, so keep that in mind. It should be close to $200, maybe more than that. Obvious upgrades, I do not have Wheel of Fortune in here or Time Spiral, so those cards do tend to be pricey, but I do have some worthwhile cards in here. So let's get it started off here. Mentioning land base, it's just going to be your typical come into play tapped, anything that's super budget. You know, it's effective as well, like the Evolving Wilds and the Terramorphic Expanses, and Ash Barrens is also a good card, but I really like Cascading Cataracts in here, especially with Kydele being able to get us a ton of mana that we can then filter it into whatever mana we need, and that's why I love this card. And then for artifacts, it's so important that we have mana fixing through that. We have Soul Ring, Thought Vessel, and Felwar Stone. Usual suspects in a 4-color deck, you need that fixing. And then you play all the signets, all 6 that you can play within these colors. Pretty good. Moving on, creature ramp, we have a Birds of Paradise, Sakura Tribe Elder, and Solemn Simulacrum. Can never have too much consistency in ramp. It's also important to play cards like Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, and Sky Shroud Claim, and any green deck really in Commander should be considering these cards. Then we move on to the cards that really kind of tie these two partner commanders together, and that is our wheels. The wheels are important because they help us get more mana off of Kydele, and they're awesome because they allow us to just get more cards that we can then reuse for Vial Smasher to deal damage to our opponents and draw more cards and potentially keep our turn going. Vial Smasher is really just sort of a card that can deal damage over the course of a game, and there's a lot of times where you can run out of steam with your hands. Having wheels are important because they also refill your hand. So we have Wheel of Fate. It's suspended. It's a cheaper version of Wheel of Fortune, so there's an obvious weakness there in that you have to wait if you suspend it, but it's still good. Then we have Winds of Change. Not necessarily discarding, but you just shuffle it back in and then you draw the same number. For 1 red mana, that's pretty good. Windfall, Dark Deal, you discard and draw same number -1. Whispering Madness, same thing as Windfall. I don't really worry about the extra crap. Reforge the Soul is essentially a Wheel of Fortune, but with the miracle cost. We also have Time Reversal, which is kind of similar to Time Spiral, that you shuffle the graveyards and the hands back into the library. Downside is it's also 5 mana, so it is rather expensive, but it's still decent, especially considering the budget options. We also play Teferi's Puzzle Box because why not? We like shuffling our hand in and getting the same number of cards. It can help us get more mana over the course of a game with Kydele. As well, it's a great way to interact with other cards in the deck that are dependent on card draw. We have other cards that are more or less just focused on our card draw, not just wheeling. So we have Brainstorm, pretty good, 1 blue mana. We're technically getting 3 card draw triggers there, so that's worth noting, especially for Kydele. Frantic Search is also pretty good. It's usually good in Storm decks, but it's good in any deck where you want to draw as many cards as possible. This is one of those decks. Ancient Excavation is one of my favorite cards, especially within the last couple years. 4 mana here, just to draw the same number of cards in your hand, and then you end up discarding that same number. But that's a lot of cards you're looking through, and a lot of cards you're choosing not to keep, but you have like a whole lot of cards that you're going to be looking through. And at worst, it's 2 mana for basic land cycling, which in a 4-color deck, and shouldn't be a surprise that you're not always going to get the best lands. Pull from Tomorrow is a newer card from Amonkhet. A little bit better than Blue Sun Zenith because you don't have to pay 3 blue in the mana cost, but you do have to discard a card, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Usually don't need too many of these in the deck. Moving on to creatures, these are just creatures that kind of synergize with the deck in certain ways. We have Magus of the Wheel, can sacrifice itself to basically do what Wheel of Fortune does. Jace's Archivist, can pay a blue and tap it to essentially Windfall. He's awesome because you don't have to sacrifice him. Whirlpool Warrior is incredible, especially for us. When ETBs, we get to shuffle our hands back into our deck and then draw that many, and then we can pay the activated ability to have everybody do that. It's just a way to get more card draw for ourselves. You have Forgotten Creation. Kind of funny. The name is pretty indicative of the card itself. It's kind of forgotten from Shadows over Innistrad. But it's a pretty good card for this type of deck. You're discarding your hand and then you're drawing that same number during your upkeep. It's kind of like Teferi's Puzzle Box, where you have the option of just getting rid of your hand and getting a fresh hand. So it's pretty decent. Notion Thief is a way to steal card draw from your opponents. Your opponents are likely going to get pissed off if you wheel after you play Notion Thief, because you basically steal all their card draw after you've basically forced them to discard their hands. So that's pretty good. And then we play Kess Dissonant Mage, which is awesome for this type of deck. We play a ton of wheels, we play a ton of card draw spells, and we want to get them back with Kess. Pretty decent. Nekasar the Mindraiser. Shouldn't have to do too much explaining. He's perfect for this type of deck. The more we wheel, the more damage we're dealing to our opponents. Archfiend of Ifnir is awesome in this deck because we can wheel a ton. Each time we discard a card, our opponent's creatures get -1/-1 counters. That's pretty solid. Plus he also has cycling. Psychosis Crawler is awesome because each time we draw a card, our opponents lose 1 life. Arjun the Shifting Flame, just another way that we can get wheels off of our creatures. And we play the Locust God because it is awesome with the amount of card draw that we have. Getting hasty little locust creature tokens out there is awesome. And Consecrated Sphinx should be going down in price due to Iconic Master, so it shouldn't be super expensive. Usually fits in well in any deck where you can just force card draw from your opponents and draw a ton. Now, even though we have Vial Smasher the Fierce and we have cards like Nekasar, it still may be a wonder as to how we win with this type of deck. Well, we play cards like Umbral Mantle, which synergizes perfectly with Kydele because she taps for a ton of colorless mana. Now, what we do with that colorless mana is we pay it to untap her with the Umbral Mantle, and we can keep tapping her to untap her over and over again, effectively giving us infinite colorless mana. Downside being it's just colorless mana. However, we have a ton of spells that have X in the converted mana cost, such as Exsanguinate, which can effectively win the game on the spot there for you. Torment of Hailfire, again, effectively winning you the game on the spot. Or if you really want to be dickish towards one person in general, you could play a Villainous Wealth and just steal, I don't know, just say, the top 40 cards of their library and say, I get all the cards out of that 40 cards. And on top of that, even if you can't win with those 3 spells, we also play Paradox Engine. Because hello, just cantripping to get more cards, untapping your mana rocks is a great way to keep your turns going to the eventual outcome of a Laboratory Maniac, which is sort of the last resort in this deck here. If you can't win with those other spells, you want to win with a Laboratory Maniac. And it is pretty easy to do that when you have a ton of cantrips and wheels and just card draw spells in general. So anyway, guys, that was my Kydele Chosen to Crewfix / Vial Smasher the Fierce deck. Kind of hard to name it. I like calling it Partners in Crime because that's what it is. Out of all the partner commanders, I have to admit, I love these. I absolutely do. I think they're extremely fun. You get the whole wheel and deal type of strategy, fits in perfectly with what Vial Smasher wants to do, which is deal damage. Each turn you can cast a spell, you should be able to cast a spell and deal a ton of damage. And I love the flavor here too, that you can play a Nekasar the Mindraiser in this deck too, as well as you could also play Yidris in here if you wanted to and get a ton of Cascade triggers. Cascade's definitely not a bad thing to consider for this deck. Obvious upgrades, like I said earlier, it's going to be the Wheel of Fortune, cards that are $40+ that are going to, they're going to demand a lot of money out of your wallet to upgrade this deck. Land base could be significantly better, obviously. And of course, when we're talking about combo decks or decks in general that want to go off as soon as possible, Mana Crypt is usually in that discussion. But whatever direction you guys decide to take this deck, just know that it is more or less just meant to be a fun deck. I wouldn't say it's super competitive, but it really kind of takes that oddball direction of the partner commanders and really kind of makes something that could work really well. It's kind of fluid. It reminds me of playing with commanders like Nekasar as well as Yidris, and even the newer Storm build with Kess. And I love the fact that I can also put her in here too. That's what the deck's meant to do. It's meant to play around with these wheel cards, and it's a bunch of fun. I always love any sort of deck that can play with these because it gets the whole table involved. Wheels are just fun in general. I know a lot of people can complain about them, but I mean, it speeds up the game. It makes it more interesting. Suddenly the game's not just this boring state of people are just drawing one card a turn, they're playing their spells, they're doing what they want to do when they want to do it. Wheels sort of force their hand. They have to play spells with the certain urgency because they know that they could be discarding them at any time, and I love that. This fucking bird. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this deck tech. Let me know what you think about it. As always, the deck tech will be in the description below. Go check it out. Let me know what you think about it. Void here, signing off. You all have a wonderful day.